Sandbagging. When a team intentionally slows down their car during pre-season testing to hide their true potential. Or in golf, everybody's favorite sport, deliberately playing below one's actual ability in order to fool opponents into accepting higher stakes bets. This is the word that gets thrown around so much when the Formula 1 season starts. And we do have two handsome gentlemen, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, rocking at Ferrari. So obviously this word is going to be chucked around plenty before Australia. Now obviously Ferrari is going to be the fastest team of all time in 2025. But actually I want to talk about how unpredictable this car is. They haven't shown off their full pace, but the word sandbagging is so useless in preseason testing because what team out of the actual 10, with the exception of Sauber, which we know is slow, is actually going to just do glory runs or go for full qualifying laps to really show how fast their car is? There is no purpose there. It's testing and practice. But I want to go over this SF-25, how it's working for both Lewis and Charles Leclerc, and why there's still a lot of room for potential, and really why the team is still very confident. Right before getting started into, I wanted to thank you guys for the support on the channel. We're getting close to that first weekend of Formula 1. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe. We got that goal of 100K, would love to hit it very soon. And with your guys' help, we can get there. Let's get started into this SF-25/Ferrari video. Coming out of testing, it was pretty obvious that McLaren had the strongest car in the strongest test. But as I stated previously, no team has shown its true potential and we haven't seen every team extract the most out of their car. Ferrari was definitely one of the biggest question marks coming out of testing, as the car was quick on one lap pace, and looking at race pace it was unpredictable, and there were plenty of times that both Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton struggled at turning the car in certain corners. The car has been 99% reworked, and I know we've talked a lot about the pull rod suspension in the front, but that is a key focus as to why the car is tough in the beginning and why it will take time for Ferrari to really grow. The conditions in Bahrain were also very unpredictable. It's not like your typical Bahrain where it's hot and the tires are getting shred up. It was cold, we had some rain, and really those conditions were never at the level that they are on a race weekend. The team is currently doing simulator work before Australia to really get down on its problems. They call the car unpredictable, words from Charles Leclerc himself. The focus is to find a better balance with this car for the rear axle without really weakening the front. Now why this is nice and why this is important is because both Charles and Lewis drive pretty similarly. Leclerc has recently opened up on the experience of working with Lewis Hamilton. He's mentioned multiple things, but the biggest thing that I got out of it was that he was surprised by the similarities in driving styles, which he views as a positive factor for the team. Most notably, he talked about that they both like to push quite a lot, especially on the entries, which is quite similar. Leclerc has got this explosive edge when he's grabbing those poles, and he really likes to set the tone going into those corners. He's one of the hardest breakers, and he's got his teammate now, Lewis Hamilton, who is known to be the latest of the late. And both are quite aggressive, precise, and really thrive in low-speed corners. They whip the car around in a tight rotation with pinpoint braking and throttle control. If you can think back to Leclerc's best tracks, it's typically Monaco, Baku, and really anything that has those slow speed corners. There's been a big focus on the sharper front end for both drivers, and out of the two, funny enough, Lewis Hamilton actually looked more in rhythm with the SF-25 than Leclerc himself. Reworking the suspension and the longer wheelbase caters to both drivers. It should have the front end bite and the stability that both need, but in testing we did see that the stability was lacking, and that's where I mentioned the rear axle needing to be better balanced without weakening the actual front end of the car. In years of the SF-23 to the SF-24, they always had to find a compromise, and Leclerc and Carlos had completely different driving styles, so that wasn't really the best for the team when upgrading the car and finding a better solution for their new Ferrari cars. And as Leclerc says, that's a positive because I think it requires the same thing out of the car, and I think as a team it's always a good thing because we'll definitely push in the same direction because we need the same things. So that was good, and we're working super well together. The team in red has not revealed its cards clearly. No one knows exactly what to expect in terms of the fight against McLaren. Hamilton never ended up completing his last race simulation, and there was a problem with the car that's being speculated at that time. And it would be wrong to say that SF-25 hasn't completely convinced spectators and insiders. In Maranello, as I stated before, they are doing simulations and there's talks about the settings being needed to be calibrated beyond the pure performance, which will obviously be judged on March 16th, the race day in Australia. The car clearly has some strengths and some weaknesses that we need to talk about. It's obviously innovative design and there's still a lot to explore with the team, and its driver pairing really helps it out with now having similar driving styles. but the car is really built to evolve and poised to extract its potential from both Leclerc and Lewis. Weaknesses right now is obviously the setup and an unproven race pace in a very hyper-competitive field, which will obviously temper the expectations before Melbourne. And the SF-25 could really be a title challenger, but we still don't know, and hopefully it's not another almost year for the team in red. So hopefully this gamble that they took, going with a 99% different car, pays off. You can't deny that Lewis Hamilton looks completely different to that of Mercedes. He's smiling bright and genuinely looks forward to every race weekend. Just recently he was talking about going to Australia and can't even believe that his first actual race weekend in Ferrari is about to happen. The team isn't just banking on the beginning of the season. The McLaren car came out of the books with a new front suspension, which is super extreme, same with the side pod design and everything else really on the car. That team put a lot of work in over the winter, and while Ferrari did the same, it's clear that McLaren, out of any team on the grid, went for the most aggressive approach. For Ferrari, it's really a key that they can adapt to this front suspension and its car overall quicker than they did in 24, because they had 3 or 4 races that were very difficult for the team and put them back quite a lot in updating the car, which was seen midway through the season. The SF-25 truly has a lot more pace to unlock, and so while I don't really like the word sandbagging, I do think the actual potential of the car is much higher than we've seen from just testing alone. There is a quiet confidence at the team, and Charles really hasn't gone on to say whether the car is fast or slow and wants to see after Australia. McLaren themselves have actually stated that the team is not showing its true pace, which obviously. And Red Bull has said after a pretty weak test for themselves, they think Ferrari is the second closest to fighting with McLaren. Now Mercedes has been quiet in the shadows. They might be a dark horse, but yet again, it was just a test. They looked pretty good, but we know how it goes for them in most of the season. And while there have been negatives, Ferrari is on the right direction with the SF-25, and they say the data is correlating, which is excellent news, and it means that the development direction upon building the new car for the whole season shouldn't throw them in a loop like it did in 24 and even 23. If I had to make a prediction on the season, talking about Ferrari and really any of the other teams, I do believe that this car has the most potential out of any of them we saw in testing, and it will take time for them to extract it. So I don't believe they can really win on that race weekend there in Australia. There is a possibility of rain, which is quite interesting for that of Leclerc and for Lewis. But as the season comes closer to that midway part, into the end game really of 2025, I do believe Ferrari will challenge McLaren. It'll be interesting to see, but don't read into these sandbagging articles as if this car is super quick and they haven't shown anything. There will be plenty of BS spewing before we actually see on the track, on Australia, who is truly the fastest. But this is what I've gathered so far. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe, it would mean the world, and peace.